There's also a gender gap. And I think the gender gap could become greater once women in general realize that the 9/11 stunt came from the CIA, the NSA, the Department of Defense, and not from bin Laden in the cave. They're going to understand that they've been sold this tremendous bill of goods and that they're suffering as their husbands and sons and daughters now go to Iraq and die uselessly for absolutely no reason. In Afghanistan, the same thing. The only basis of this is the 9/11 myth. Once you tear down the 9/11 myth, Bush has not got a leg to stand on.
Do you feel that people in this country are awakening to the truth? What is your feel on that? What is your take on that?
There's a lot of stuff about this. I just named 4 or 5 different things.
Sure.
In August of 2004, Jimmy Walter, who's kind of a political philanthropist, paid the Zogby organization of Utica, New York, to do a poll. And they did New York City, New York State, and they found that slightly less than 50% of New York City, which is already remarkable given the horrendous carnage in New York, didn't believe the official version of 9/11.
What was that percentage again?
Almost 50%. It's something 47, 48%.
Okay.
Didn't believe the official story.
Okay.
And they wanted, and almost 50% also wanted a reopening of the investigation. Now that's New York City, New York State, 2 years ago, almost.
Okay.
Now we have in May of 2006,
I'm a 9/11 victim. I met you in October 2001. Sabrina? You came for Lieutenant Robert F. Wallace. Of course. I have a question for you. You reported to Peter Jennings that on 9/11 that the World Trade, the towers were going to collapse, and excuse me, no steel structure in history has ever collapsed due to a fire. How come the people in the buildings weren't notified, and who else knew about this, and how do you sleep at night?
Ma'am, I didn't know that the towers were going to collapse.
You reported to Peter Jennings. No.
You said on Peter Jennings on ABC
and
video, you indeed said that the towers, you were notified the towers were going to collapse while you were in not sure exactly where you were prior to, but you said it on ABC video with Peter Jennings in an interview that you were aware that towers were going to collapse in advance. We'd like to know who told you the towers were going to collapse in advance, sir, and also we'd like to know who else you told.
Well, the fact is that I didn't realize the towers would collapse. I never realized that. If I can complete the sentence, if you give me the courtesy to complete the sentence, our understanding was that over a long period of time, the way other buildings collapsed, the towers could collapse, meaning over a 7, 8, 9, 10-hour period. No one that I knew of had any idea that they would implode. That was a complete surprise. Thank you.
Thank you all. David, time to start World Trade Center number 7 before 26 minutes of collapse before it actually went down.
State, but let's get on down to New York City. What you got to say about Giuliani? Because when Giuliani was mayor of New York City, I was living across the bridge in Englewood, New Jersey, and the way that he handled certain things that went on, and the man was shot 42 times, and the whole beating of the Haitian and all of that. How he never acknowledged the mothers, and then how he did such so-called a wonderful job of
he did no wonderful job.
What that myth? Can we dispel that myth? Can you give some insight to Giuliani? Because I predicted back when he was mayor that he would be running for president, and they seem to be entertaining this on the Sunday morning political talk shows. Could you give us a little insight into Giuliani?
Let's talk about Giuliani now. What we know is that his father was a mafioso. His father was a member of organized crime. That is now documented and then conceded by him. I would say that his mentality can only be described as fascist. And it could be that Mussolini was an important figure in the family back in the 1930s or 1940s.
His family or the family?
In the Giuliani family, that Mussolini was held in high regard, because I don't know if there's any other way to do it. He has a history, Giuliani has a history of trying to sue people who are his critics. Even as mayor, he repeatedly tried to go to court against people. As mayor, he attempted to run the city of the rich, by the rich, and for the rich. There's a famous case of the sidewalk artists who were persecuted because Giuliani thought they were interfering with the posh boutiques of Fifth Avenue. And of course, the police brutality that you mentioned is notorious. But now and of course, Giuliani comes from a background in the Justice Department. I attacked him already in the 1980s as an administrative fascist. In other words, somebody who was part of a clique that they wanted to impose top-down police state totalitarian rule. 9/11. There are a number of things to be said about 9/11. One thing is that Giuliani was running a drill called Tripod 3, which was a biological weapons drill, which involved the use of a pier in the Hudson River. And there's a very interesting question whether parts of 9/11 were bootlegged or conduited through Tripod as a part of the overall picture, because we know from the broader research that 9/11 in general, using government assets, was run through legally sanctioned drills like Amalgam Virgo, Global Guardian, Vigilant Warrior, Vigilant Guardian, Global Vigilance, and stuff like this. So we have about 15 drills that bear on 9/11. Now, Giuliani says he had his base of operations, his headquarters, in Building 7. In the morning, he was told, sometime 11 o'clock to noon, or perhaps a little bit earlier, he's told, you should leave your headquarters. And he says this in an interview. I was told to leave my headquarters because the Twin Towers were coming down. This is early in the day. So before the two towers have come down, Giuliani is in Building 7, and he's told to leave. And he says, we were told the towers were about to come down. Now, why weren't the firemen and the policemen told that the Twin Towers were going to come down? How can Giuliani come forward and say, I was told the two towers were going to collapse? What about those poor people who were in there, who were told to stay there? The Port Authority told them to stay there. And the firemen died in large numbers, and the policemen, and the Port Authority policemen, and so forth. So he's told to save himself, and they're not. And then we get to the really serious question, the crime scene. 9/11, the Twin Towers, is a crime scene. The North Tower, the South Tower. Building 7 is also a crime scene. Everybody forgets about Building 7, where he had his headquarters that came down at 5:30 in the afternoon, even though it is a couple of hundred yards from either of the towers, was not damaged when they came down, was not hit by an airplane, did not have any big fires. It came down in what's obviously controlled demolition at 5:30 in the afternoon, and everybody was told, even sitting in Berlin, Germany, I was told through CNN, Building 7 is about to collapse. Now, why is it about to collapse? There's no fire, there's no airplane. Why should it? It's a 45, 47-story building. In most cities of the world, it would be the biggest building in town. Okay, this is all suspicious. Now, what does Giuliani do? If you've had a plane crash, that comes under NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board. Once a plane has crashed, if you touch any piece of that wreckage, that's a felony.
Okay.
That's a federal felony. You're not allowed to.
Okay.
What does Giuliani do? Giuliani says, forget about all that. Violate all federal laws. He's a former federal prosecutor. He knows what he's doing. He says, violate the federal laws. To hell with the federal laws. We're going to grab all of the debris. We're going to ship it to Fresh Kills on Staten Island. And what he's doing here is a cynical idea, because the firemen are concerned about the human remains of their friends who are in here. Maybe I'm more of a New Yorker than other people who've written about 9/11. My uncle was a New York City policeman, my uncle. So I'm concerned about the firemen and the policemen in New York. And what Giuliani does is, first of all, he destroys the crime scene, but then to cover that, he plays the firemen against the policemen. So the firemen say, go slow, we want the bodies of our comrades. The policeman, he goads the policeman to get into fights with the firemen. He arranges, it looks to me, he fakes discoveries of fire trucks filled with stolen merchandise to try to demonize the firemen. And then on, I guess it's October 31st or November 1st of 2001, he gets what he wants, which is the brawl, the riot, with the policemen and the firemen going at it. In other words, a brawl, a big punch-out between these two groups. And he is able to sit above this. So he is a cynical, operative, evil to the core, knows exactly what he's doing. He is a figure of the invisible government. He is a September criminal. He should not be president of the United States. He ought to be in jail.
Please.
He should be at Nuremberg.
"9/11 Truth Squads. What are we going to do? We're going to disrupt the media food chain. We will break the controlled environment, disrupt the mass brainwashing. We will create a media feeding frenzy. We can force the controlled corporate media to work for us. It can be done. Now, how do we do it? Hey, the Socratic method. We ask questions. But of course, when we ask questions, they're loaded questions. Here's our man. Plato, and Socrates, of course, but Plato is the way we know him, tells us this is the way you operate. The gadflies, we are the gadflies of the world, but we can do something profound. Now, what are you going to ask? Senator, congressman, governor, what about the Brzezinski warning? He says they're preparing a new 9/11 to pitch us into war with Iran. Won't you condemn it? Won't you pledge to investigate it? We're going to ask about the nuclear sneak attack on Iran, the new 9/11. We want to junk the Kane-Hamilton report. We can go through why. There are many facts in the public domain that are not even findings, they're just facts. We want to reopen 9/11. And then the other dimension is your limitless creativity, your favorite issue. What is it? Building 7, the Pentagon, the stock shorting, anything that you like is grist for the mill. Now, do you see this young gentleman? He gives us an example of what you can do with almost no resources. He is a person who helped within the framework that we had created. We had created the framework. This guy, his name is Siddharth, and he is the one who got Allen defeated in Virginia simply by showing up with a camera. Right? So he's S.R. Siddharth, and it was Monday, August 14th, and he showed up he's at the campaign headquarters of Webb, but it's Senator Allen's Macaca moment. And you saw this. It was a media frenzy. Macaca looks over at him and says, "Hey, Macaca, welcome to the real world of Virginia." He's a monstrous racist. He's a monster of racism and prejudice. The Macaca moment. And the Macaca moment determined the majority of the U.S. Senate. We are now in a situation of breakdown crisis where there's a kind of nervous energy, you might even say a hysteria in the population, right? Britney, it's Britney or Macaca. It's Britney or the Girls Gone Wild or whatever it is, right? But there is an instability, a lability in the mass psychology, which you can touch with your hand. Now, the Macaca moment. Our job is to create Macaca moments around 9/11 truth. Here's what we do. The basic truth squad, 2 people to ask questions, look different, one well-dressed, one scruffy, whatever. Go to different corners of the room. A question, a follow-up. Another person comes with a camcorder or a cell phone. You confront them on the issues. You should not get arrested. It shouldn't be anything like this. I can't guarantee that you won't be. But that's not the idea. The idea is emphatically it's nothing illegal. This is democracy. We are citizens. They want our votes. They must answer. They have a duty to answer us. You tape the result and you post it. And we'll build up moments of tremendous interest. We've done a couple, and I'll tell you in just a minute about some of these. You put them up on 9/11 Blogger, YouTube, DC911truth.org. We have our website, 911truthsquads.com.
I'm a 9/11 victim I met you in October 2020. Sabrina? You came for Lieutenant Robert F. Wallace. Of course. I have a question for you. You reported to Peter Jennings that on 9/11 that the World Trade, the towers were going to collapse, and excuse me, no steel structure in history has ever collapsed due to a fire. How come the people in the building weren't notified, and who else knew about this, and how do you sleep at night?
Ma'am, I didn't know that the towers were going to collapse.
You reported
And
to
also,
Peter Jennings.
no.
You said on Peter Jennings on ABC
And
video,
also-
you indeed said that the towers, you were notified towers were going to collapse while you were in some, not sure exactly where you were prior to, but you said it on ABC video with Peter Jennings in an interview. That you were aware that the towers were going to collapse in advance. We'd like to know who told you the towers were going to collapse in advance, sir, and also we'd like to know who else you told.
Well, the fact is that I didn't realize the towers would collapse. I never realized that. If
We're going to disrupt the media food chain. We will break the controlled environment, disrupt the mass brainwashing. We will create a media feeding frenzy. We can force the controlled corporate media to work for us. It can be done.
But if I can complete the sentence, if you give me the courtesy to complete the sentence, our understanding was that over a long period of time, the way other buildings collapsed, the towers could collapse, meaning over a 7, 8, 9, 10-hour period. No one that I knew of had any idea that they would implode. That was a complete surprise. Thank you.
Thank you all. Do you have any comments about World Trade Center?
So the content provider is you. In other words, to take the tremendous theoretical elaboration that we've put together over the past 5 years plus and project that into this wide open, chaotic presidential primary situation. The Truth Squads were founded in Dover, New Hampshire, January 20th. Two guys with almost no experience went out and confronted Senator Dodd, and they made him say that he would look into reopening the 9/11 Commission. And Senator Dodd. It was not his plan. He said, oh, I'll look into it. And they got him twice. And the whole thing was put in detail in a local newspaper, which we'll be posting. So Dodd, Richardson was asked, will you support the reopening of 9/11? And he said, yes. He said it. Unfortunately, this they didn't tape. If we had it on tape, we'd have something, right? And Jesse Jackson, this was interesting. We had a meeting at the home of a lady who's here, I think. Lynn, is Lynn here? Yes. In Washington, before the January 27th peace demonstration, we had a meeting of the people who were going to take part. Some really smart kids from Temple University in Philadelphia showed up. And sure enough, the next day, they went out and found at the speaker's platform of that demonstration, where the 9/11 people were banned, of course, banned, Jesse Jackson. They approached. Reverend, will you support reopening 9/11? What about Building 7? What about this stuff? And Jesse Jackson, I mean, you have to see it, is an exercise in flight, right? In evasive action, right? Too hot for Jesse to handle. Doesn't want to touch it. And this is just the beginning, because there are 25 candidates. He's not even a candidate, but you see what you can do. So you want to look at the front runners. Now, obviously, in many ways, Giuliani is in a position of Giuliani.
That you were aware that towers were going to collapse in advance. We'd like to know who told you the towers were going to collapse in advance, sir, and also we'd like to know who else you told.
Giuliani. But don't forget Hillary Clinton. There's another guy, some call him Obama. Obama because of his proclivity to bomb Iran. McCain, obviously. Romney. Romney seems to be the makeover artist. He's like one of these X-Men, right? He can take on any shape. Now, Jack Blood used this term viral. I don't like viral for what we do, but I would call it nonlinear possibilities. In other words, the possibilities of exponential growth are there. Suppose this becomes a campus fad. When I saw how fast those Temple University guys went out and did this, I was amazed. They did it. It can become a mania, because what you're doing is tapping into the tremendous resentment of the average person against the ruling class. Those financiers, those corrupt politicians, right? This disgust and resentment and loathing for the entire rotten crew. And now they're going to say, guess what? You're going to Iran. Your children are going to go die in Iran for the greater glory of the neocons.
Well, the fact is that I didn't realize the towers would collapse. I never realized that.
in the air over the United States have been ordered to land at the nearest airport.
I think
one
what
of
you're going to see is...
I just want to check one thing, because one of the very first people the President talked to was the Director of the FBI, and Pierre Thomas, who covers the Justice Department and the FBI for us, has been here. They may think they prepare for this kind of thing, Pierre, but man, it must have been a shock.
Stunning shock. The FBI Special Operations Center is now in full alert. The FBI extremely concerned that there would be additional attacks. Normally when you have a situation like this, they immediately get on the line with the CIA, the various intelligence agencies, trying to get a sense of who might have been planning something. But right now, the first order of business is to protect against a second attack, third attack. The feeling is normally when you have this kind of situation, there will be more attacks almost immediately.
Let's go to the trade tower again, because, John, we now have what do we have? We don't...
It looks like a new plume, a new large plume of smoke.
It may be that something fell off the building. It may be that something has fallen. We don't know, to be perfectly honest. But that is what you're looking at, is the current. That's the scene at this moment at the World Trade Center. Dan Daler from ABC's Good Morning America is down in the general vicinity. Dan, can you tell us what has just happened?
Yes, Peter, it's Don Daly down here. I'm 4 blocks north of the World Trade Center. The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself, and it is not there anymore.
That should be it.
It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Exactly. The second building that we witnessed the airplane enter had been, the top half had been fully involved in flame. It just collapsed. There is panic on the streets. Thousands of people running up Church Street, which is what I'm looking out on, trying to get away. But the entire, at least as far as I can see, the top half of the building, at least half of it, I can't see below that, half of it just started with a gigantic rumble, folded in on itself, and collapsed in a huge plume of smoke and dust.
We're talking about massive casualties here at the moment, and we have... Whew. That is extraordinary.
There is panic on the streets. There are people screaming and running from the site. The gigantic plume of smoke has reached me, and I'm probably a quarter of a mile north of there.
Peter,
Now this is what it looked like moments ago. My God. The southern tower, 10 o'clock Eastern time this morning, just collapsing on itself. This is a place where thousands of people work. We have no idea what caused this. If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
Peter?
Yes, Dan.
What appeared to happen from my vantage point, the top part of the building was totally involved in fire, and there appeared to be no effort possible to put that fire out. It looked like the top part of the building was so weakened by the fire that the weight of it collapsed the rest of the building. That's what appeared to happen. I did not see anything happening at the base of the building. It all appeared to start at the top and then just collapse the rest of the building by the sheer weight of the top. There was no explosion or anything at the base part of it, but I did see that the top part of it started to collapse. The walls started to bulge out, bricks, glass things coming out, and then it collapsed in on itself, and it appeared to just fold down from there, from the very top.
Thanks, Don, very much. Just looking at that, I don't know why, but when was the last time the United States was attacked in this fashion? It was Pearl Harbor in 1941.
From the scene now, there's obviously massive casualties. Usually during these things, there's a little bit of a high pitch but basic calm over the police radios among the emergency workers. I can hear them screaming, signal 1013, which is the police code for help, calling for help at the triage center, where other people who were already injured have been injured more, confirming that the building has collapsed. Dozens of officers, more civilians are injured. And we don't know, although I'd have to suggest, given the size of that building, what progress the evacuation was in of the tower that collapsed.
Yes, Pierre Thomas.
One thing I might add is